The LSU Tigers and Oklahoma Sooners get set to do battle Saturday night in Baton Rouge. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Tigers and the Sooners. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. That's prizepicks.com, promo code SECU to get your $50 bonus today. LSU and Oklahoma get set to do battle in their first ever meeting with OU as a member of the SEC. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Tigers and the Sooners. I am Chris Phillips. Joining me, as he does once again, my good friend Dave Shumate. Dave, appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much for doing this, and excited to break down this game with you.
Yeah, I think we got some momentum on the line here, CP. Big momentum game for both teams to finish off. I think both fan bases would agree, a disappointing 2024 campaign. But if you can reel this one off, LSU can go for a 9th win in a bowl game. Oklahoma with an 8th win if they were to get their 7th on Saturday. And then obviously whatever bowl game you go to, get the 8th. So I think still a lot on the line, some momentum rolling into 2025. Both coaches will kind of be ready to revamp the roster. Oklahoma adding an OC. I still think there's still a lot to play for overall because both teams, the loser of this would feel really bad. LSU finishing 7-5, losing 4 of their last 5. Oklahoma again just going 500 in their first year in league play. Granted, without all injuries included, obviously got the big one against Alabama, but still would leave a sour taste in your mouth. So I think a feel-good ending to the season for both teams and for different reasons.
Dave, you ever seen the Squidward meme where he's looking out of the window at SpongeBob and Patrick playing outside? That's how I feel like LSU and Oklahoma feel looking out, and like everybody else is doing rivalry week things. And then we've got LSU Oklahoma. That's not a rivalry in any sense of the word. It's just kind of interesting, right? Like LSU doesn't have a rival to play this week, nor does Oklahoma. It just, I don't know. It's a good game.
For the longest, it was the Arkansas game for LSU at the end of the year. Right. That was kind of the battle for the Golden Boot was the rival, but I guess just not having an other in-state team in there kind of hurts that a little bit.
It's just kind of interesting. I feel like both are probably like, hey, don't forget about us. We have a pretty good game over here. Yeah, it's like we're all focused on the Iron Bowl and the Palmetto Bowl and this game, that game. And then it's like, here's this one too. So, again, a great game, though. Again, I think it's flying under the radar, Dave, a little bit for that reason. Again, 6 o'clock local time, kickoff there on ESPN down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at Death Valley. Dave, LSU is a 6-point favorite in this game. The over-under is set at 47. LSU leads the all-time series 2-1. Dave, the last time they met was 2019 in the college football playoff. LSU beat Oklahoma by a final score of 63-28. And Dave, as we talk about this game, you know what's funny? I mentioned that it's not a rivalry like the others, obviously. I don't think anybody's going to try to spin that it is. But something I learned over the summer, Dave, because we talked to a lot of Oklahoma and Texas folks alike, but talked to a lot of Oklahoma folks, about what they were expecting coming in the SEC, road trips they were most looking forward to. Baton Rouge was right there at the top. But the reason was, Dave, I don't know if it's all of them, but there's at least this faction of Oklahoma fans that hates LSU. They hate them. I mean, from the standpoint of, I think they said back to 2003 when Oklahoma and LSU played in the Sugar Bowl. And, I heard stories of Oklahoma fans being spit on and the way they were treated. And apparently that left a really, really nasty taste in the mouth for OU fans. So, everything I said about not being a rivalry, it's certainly not a traditional rivalry or anything of the sort. They've only met 3 times. But, Dave, there's some underlying bad blood in this one, at least from the Oklahoma side of things.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking the 03 national championship game. Yeah. When Matt Mogg, Nick Saban, and them won that game. Yeah, I could see that because that game was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about. I mean, I remember that as a kid. I was probably about in 8th grade. So you're right. I could see that. That's the last time they played.
Dave, they still talk about the way they were treated in New Orleans 21 years later. So obviously it sticks out in their mind a little bit.
Now they got to go back to the boot.
Yeah, now they got to go back to they really got to go into the eye of the tiger. So.
Now, what's LSU's fire? I mean, how fired up are LSU fans going to be going into this? It's almost just like it's the last family reunion of the season, guys.
It's like we talked about though, Dave. And I don't. To your point, I mean, is it going to be peak Death Valley? Probably not. But this goes. I mean, this sounds so obvious, but man, there's a big difference in finishing 7-5 and finishing 8-4.
Yeah, and I know that's obvious, but you're right. There is a 7-5 feels really average. 8-4 at least feels above average.
8-4 feels like 8-4 feels like you were a punch or two away from achieving your goals. 7-5, you were nowhere even remotely in the stratosphere of having the kind of season you wanted. Right? I mean, it's already tough to stomach if you're an LSU fan. You lose this one, and like you said, what would it be 4 or 5 you'd lose to close out the year? I mean, be a lot of tough questions for Brian Kelly and company going into the offseason. Dave, the big question in this one for me, how does Oklahoma follow up that performance against Alabama, right? And it's been such a week-to-week league this year. Nobody saw what we saw in Norman last weekend coming, the way that Oklahoma just dominated Alabama, the way they did it. Jackson Arnold, his rushing ability. This is a different challenge than I think Oklahoma, Dave, has essentially faced all year, right? We talked about this after Vandy beat Alabama early in the season. I'm not saying it was on the same level of that upset, but you get what I'm saying is like Oklahoma has been the doubted all year long, and they're still the doubted. They're an underdog, but like now it's just how do you handle prosperity? I think that's my biggest question here is like how does Oklahoma handle that? Now you got to go into a tough, raucous road environment. Can they make it back-to-back good performances, I guess, is my question. Like, how do you handle coming off that Bama game?
No, you're right. That'll be Brent Venables' biggest challenge this week. Like, yeah, because you feel like they had that bye week. They probably put together, not probably, they did. I mean, proof of concept, a good game plan. We're playing some complimentary football. Probably get to change that up a little bit this week. But you're right. The focus will be, okay, guys, I know we got to 6. But like, this will be, we can go win this game. 7 wins, win in Tiger Stadium. 7-5 your first year with all the injuries, your top 5 out of your top 7 receivers being out most of the year, offensive line injuries. You're firing Seth Luttrell, the OC, in the middle of the year. Jackson Arnold's been in and out of the lineup. 7-5 your first year in the SEC. Oklahoma fans would probably be like, this was looking really bleak in October. But you know what? 7-5, we go win our bowl game. We finish 8-5 in the SEC in the first year. We'll take that. All things considering what happened in the middle of the year. I mean, I would if I was an Oklahoma fan.
Oh, I mean, Dave, with everything that's happened this year for Oklahoma, 7-5 would be a magical record.
Think about you, CP. We're all prisoners of the moment. Think about your last 2 games you could hang your hat on.
Beating Alabama and LSU. Not a bad way to close out the season. Dave, as we look at the matchup, Dave, I look to LSU's offensive line against that Oklahoma defensive line. I think that battle in the trenches is going to be really fascinating because Oklahoma, we obviously saw it last weekend. We've known this all year. They've got the dogs in the front 7 to give any team a lot of problems. LSU's had their inconsistencies on the offensive front. That's a battle I'm looking forward to on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Billy Bowman, Danny Stutzman, Woody Washington. They've been in this Brent Venables system for 3 years now. They understand it. They played a lot of football. That's why I thought last week's game was going to be close. Those guys were not going to go get embarrassed on senior night in their home stadium. They've played too much football, not necessarily in the SEC, but just being an Oklahoma Sooner is I'm sure as prideful as that is for them. They were not wanting to go get embarrassed. They had 2 weeks to prepare for that game plan. I think they'll have another good game plan this week. As you know, Chris, the defense hasn't been the issue at all this year. I mean, it was probably their worst performance of the season. I'm just trying to think without the top of my head without going to really look at the scat. I mean, I think they've been pretty consistent across the board. Well,
for LSU,
for Oklahoma.
Oh, for Oklahoma,
their worst.
Yeah, I mean they have been consistent. It's been
against South Carolina, their poor defense was in a hole 21-0 right off the bat because of interceptions and pick 6. I mean, maybe Ole Miss, but you know what it was, CP? I'll say this. I know what it is. There's 2 weeks ago. They held their own a little bit against Missouri and Drew Pine, but they would even tell you, hey, game on the line. If we just get a stop here, it's over with 2 minutes left. They probably are like, that's not us to go let a backup quarterback like Drew Pine go drive and tie this thing up. That's probably where they're like, we could have played better against Oklahoma. But to my point, it wasn't a terrible performance. A lot of that was on the offense and 5 turnovers. Mm-hmm. So the defense has showed up every week. It's one of the more consistent sides of the ball of any team in the SEC. So I expect them to play well this week in Baton Rouge as well.
On the other side, Dave, how much concern does it give you? I'm wondering what the game plan is from Blake Baker this week when it comes to Jackson Arnold's rushing ability. They've obviously struggled immensely this season when it comes to rushing quarterbacks. They held Diego Pavia in check, but I think just from a personnel standpoint, I think the book's kind of out on Tim Beck and what Vandy does offensively. But I mean, you got to look, Dave, at this season with Marcel Reed, Jalen Milroe. I'm not saying Jackson Arnold's that kind of guy, but I think if you're an LSU fan,
athlete though, he's more athletic than people think he is.
He's a sneaky good athlete. He's a much better athlete, I think, than people give him credit for. I think that's something that's it gives me concern from the LSU perspective of, if Jackson Arnold gets loose again, and we saw him last week against Alabama do that, rush for over 100 yards, could be a long night for the Bayou Bengals.
Yeah, and he's got good football awareness, good instincts. Like he has a good feel on how to set up his blocks, when to explode through the hole, burst through the hole. Like, again, I'm not saying this guy's breaking out like Nick Marshall or Cam Newton or somebody like that in the quarterback spot, but he has a feel for the run game on it. Hey, I'm going to hit A, B, or C gap here. Maybe stretch it out to the D gap. Like you could tell last week there was a real feel for it. Hey, just fall ahead 3 to 4 yards, shoot. I mean, he's picking up 6 to 8. He really didn't bust a ton on Alabama. He just kept them ahead of the chains and was just like, hey, can you stop us on 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3? I don't think they'll have the exact same game plan they had against Alabama, but I think it'll be something similar because they're probably sitting there like, we don't have any weapons on the outside at all. We got Bauer Sharp, who came over to us as a backup quarterback from Southeastern in Louisiana. So it's kind of like, what's our real threat on the outside? How about we just kind of let's kind of take a military academy approach here and let's just try to stay ahead of the chains. Hey, man, there's nothing wrong with being in 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5. If you're just trying to get to 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, and you keep that time of possession going, that's less stops. Your really good defense has to get against Garrett Nussmeier and them, and let's throw in they maybe get a turnover or two. I mean, LSU's not getting the ball much, and it puts a lot of pressure on LSU's offense to have to go execute when they do get the football. I would go in with a similar game plan. Yeah, I mean, that's your best weapon, and maybe Joe John Finley, the interim OC's kind of figured that out. And I think you can run on LSU, so it's kind of one of those things. It's like maybe we don't go too far from the blueprint we used on Alabama last week, guys.
Yeah, I think you stick with that and make LSU prove that they can stop it. I mean, I think you got to make them prove they can stop it. Dave, the question we got to ask about the LSU Tigers offensively specifically is what version of Nuss do we get? What version of Garrett Nussmeier shows up against a pretty darn good Oklahoma defense? I mean, we've seen the best of Garrett Nussmeier, and we have seen the worst. And it seems like LSU has really gone as he has gone, to be honest. So what version do we get? Again, this is a different challenge. The Oklahoma defense, for everything Oklahoma hasn't been this year, they've been really salty defensively. But Garrett Nussmeier, I mean, it is going to be critical. He make the right decisions, make the right reads, trust his offensive line in this spot, be able to step up in the pocket, deliver the football. Because at times, talking to LSU folks, Dave, it's not even just about the turnovers, which, I mean, they've been terrible, a lot of them. But it's about him not seeing open guys, not making the right decisions. Those are the things that have been driving LSU folks so crazy. So, do you get the best version of Garrett Nussmeier? You're going to have him, man, because I mean, this is a game, if bad Garrett Nussmeier shows up, Oklahoma, their defense can absolutely lead them to victory in this one.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a weakness, we were talking just highly on it. And I love the front seven. I mean, even the Robinson kid, the true freshman and defensive tackle, had a big game last week. The secondary's probably been the kryptonite at times, a little bit vertical passing game. And I think that's why people are a little surprised Bama didn't take more shots last week, because that's where I think Oklahoma can get God at times. Throw in, LSU has 3 legit weapons. I don't know if any of the 3 are like dudes that LSU is accustomed to seeing, maybe like Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors. Obviously got none of those guys. But Kyron Lacey's good. CJ Daniels is certainly good enough. And then Aaron Anderson, certainly good enough. So LSU has weapons on the outside. I could see them having somewhat of a big day. If I'm them, until LSU won't commit to the run game, and I'll be honest, I don't know if you're going to get a lot going against them, honestly, because LSU hadn't been great in the run game in general all year. And we're in week 14. Everybody,
I mean, Dave, they are who they are in the run game.
They are who they are at this point.
Right.
Pass pro's been fine.
Yeah.
If I'm LSU and I'm Joe Sloan, though, I'm probably trying to take advantage of the vertical passing game here, and let's just be like, hey, are they ready to come run with us today? Like right out of the gates, I think we have a mismatch on the outside with our top 3 guys on the outside compared to some guys in the secondary for Oklahoma's defense.
Dave, Brian Kelly had some interesting comments this week and talked a lot about roster building, how aggressive they're going to be in the portal. Does it give you any concern that they may not be fully focused on the task at hand? It almost kind of reminded me of, and I'm not saying it's going to play out this way, I'm just asking the question. It kind of reminded me of the Hugh Freeze comment after they lost the bowl game. Well, we were busy recruiting. Like, do you have any concern that LSU is, for whatever reason, not fully focused on this task at hand Saturday?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't think the players even pay attention to that. I don't know. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's some of these guys last game at Tiger said, I don't know. Oklahoma's a big brand name. I mean, how are you not getting up to play that game at home? Come on. Like, I don't know. Maybe for a guy or two. I think overall, though, I don't know if I'd say they'd be locked in. Maybe they're distracted because of other reasons, but I don't think specifically because, heck, I bet if you went and asked a couple of those guys or a decent amount of them, they wouldn't even know he said it. Because, I mean, they're like, I don't follow Coach. I don't really follow what he says, press conferences and stuff, saying unless people are sending it to him. So, no, I don't think so. I mean, I know Brian Kelly knows this is a big, like, momentum game and, like, hey, we're going to go hit the portal heavy. We're going to be big spenders this year compared to what we were last year. So this is something you can go hang your hat on. Again, I don't think you're walking into living rooms. You're having kids come on your campus when you're signing these contracts and be like, "Hey, remember we beat Oklahoma to finish 8-4." Like, I don't think that's putting anybody over the edge. But like you said earlier, Chris, 8-4, 9-4 with a bowl win is a lot better than 7-5 and maybe losing your bowl game 7-6 in that perspective. So no, I don't think that'll be LSU's not losing the game because of that. I know you're not saying that. It's just I don't know. I don't think that's as big of a distraction as some may think.
Yeah, just posing the question. I just thought it was interesting to hear Kelly be so forthcoming about the portal strategy. Granted, he was asked the question. So, no, I think to your point, I think, a bowl game is not comparable to last game of the year at Tiger Stadium at night. I do think the fans will show up and be excited. And again, one last hurrah for the 20.
I mean, Chris, from a momentum standpoint, people would use against you. You lost 4 of your last 5 games. I mean, you were in a pretty good driver's seat situation to make the playoffs. It's like you just totally melted down. Then you don't want that. I mean, again, it's still going to be losing 3 out of your last 5. But that, again, to your point, that sounds a lot better than 4.
Well, it's the difference, Dave. It's the difference between you lost 4 out of your last 5 or you won your last 2 in a row.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So, like, you can spin it the other way, if you can win this one. All right, Dave, that being said, let's lock in our predictions, lock in our picks for this one. I'll let you start. LSU, Oklahoma, Saturday night in. Who comes out on top?
This is one for me, Chris, that I've kind of struggled all week with a little bit. It's kind of, I can make a case. I could see a path to victory for both these teams, if not multiple for both teams. Nothing would shock me here except maybe the only thing that would shock me would be Oklahoma, like boat racing, going into Baton Rouge and beating LSU bad would shock me with that offense. Because again, I don't think they can be explosive, and I think they know that. They're going to try to be a time of possession team in this one. I mean, but push come to shove. Again, don't feel confident in it. I just think at home, how does Oklahoma bounce back of a big emotional win? I know Brent Venables has personal stuff going on. You say prayers for his family. Again, I don't think they're not focused going in this game. Like, probably last week was a little bit of a relief. And you know what happens when you get a little bit of relief, Chris? You relax. So it's kind of like, I'm not saying they're obviously going through the motions. They're fired up to go play at LSU to get a win in Tiger Stadium to go 7-5. Because again, 7-5 sounds a lot better than 6-6, definitely. And then I don't know, man. I do think LSU's going to have. I think we're going to be looking back after this game and being like, why didn't Alabama try to stretch the field more instead of keep running Jalen Milroe against Oklahoma last week? Because I do think LSU is going to take advantage of those 3 receivers. I think having somewhat of a mismatch and kind of poking a hole in the weakness of a good Oklahoma defense. I don't know. I think Garrett Nussmeier is a good day. It's just a feel. I think he has a good day. I do think this is a back and forth game. I do think Oklahoma does control the clock some, but I think big fourth quarter stop, a turnover by Jackson Arnold. I think LSU ultimately closes out the season at home, gets to 8-4. Give me LSU 28-20. No real confidence in that. Just, I don't know. I'm gonna take Garrett Nussmeier and those athletes on the outside. I think that's the advantage, and that's something to watch there. And not saying Oklahoma's not locked in or they're distracted in this one. I just think it's a big ask it's a lot of roller coasters up and down this year to ask them to get back, go on the road Thanksgiving week. I don't know. Again, Thanksgiving week, that really has nothing to do with it. I just feel better about LSU at home in this one. How does Oklahoma look? I feel like I know their offensive game plan, what it'll be, but I'll trust LSU at home.
Dave, great minds think alike. I do agree with you. I do think that LSU is going to stretch the field vertically. I think the Oklahoma defense is going to hear the names Kyron Lacey and Aaron Anderson a good bit on Saturday night. I think that, to your point, I brought up the point about Brian Kelly and the roster building the portal. I think LSU will be locked in. I do. I just, what really stuck out to me, I think it was middle of last week going in the Vandy game, was hearing a Will Campbell talk about what these last two games meant. And, he took it really, really personally, and you could tell he was fired up. So I think the leadership on LSU is good. Oklahoma got a great win last week. If this game was in Norman, Dave, I might go the other way. I don't know. I think the game being played in Baton Rouge means a lot. I think it's going to be a really good atmosphere. I think what Oklahoma did last week against Bama was a little bit of fool's gold. We've learned this season, Dave, you can't look at one game, draw conclusions. Well, that's just who you are now. So, A plus B equals C. It just doesn't work out that way. I think Oklahoma will look like a different team this week. And I think a lot of that will be because of LSU. I think the offensive line will play really, really well. I'm not saying they're going to run the football, but I think they'll be able to protect Garrett Nussmeier. He'll hit some of those downfield throws. And I think Blake Baker will have a good plan to. And if you're Oklahoma, make LSU prove you can stop the quarterback run game. Make them prove they can stop Jackson Arnold rushing the football. I think Blake Baker's going to have a good plan, though. I think they're going to keep him in the pocket more so and do a better job than Bama did. Force him to try to stretch the field, and I don't think Oklahoma's got enough on the offensive side. So I think LSU, to your point, Dave, you essentially stole my score prediction, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I think LSU gets the win at home at night. This is a big momentum-building opportunity, like you mentioned, for both sides, but I think it's the Bayou Bengals come out on top. Give me LSU 26, Oklahoma 19 in a little bit of a lower scoring affair, but I think LSU finds a way to get it done on the home field. Again, hard-fought game by the Sooners, but, how do they handle coming off that emotional high? Everybody's patting you on the back this week. Great job, beat Bama. I think it's a really, really tough challenge this week, and LSU desperately needs it going into what's going to be a critical offseason for Brian Kelly and company. So lock me in, LSU 26, Oklahoma 19.
I like that.
Yeah.
Same realm as you.
Yeah, we're around the same. I think it's a touchdown game, and I even took LSU, Dave, minus 6.5. I think they win by at least a touchdown, but I'd take them right at a touchdown. I think they barely cover but get it done. So, guys, what do you think? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see this one playing out when LSU and Oklahoma do battle on Saturday night at Death Valley? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, you can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.